Hello everyone, welcome back. Wisteria here, still on the Shropshire folk tales, and it only seems right that we should go into looking at the folklore that is known as the Wenlock Devil. In the 1800s, Much Wenlock had a reputation for hard drinking. When Reverend Wayne was appointed Vicar of Wenlock, he wrote to the town clerk, Humphrey Hinton, to ask whether the society, the roads, and the water were good. Mr. Hinton replied that the society and the roads were fine, but stated that he could give no information about the water, as the Wenlock people never drank it. To refuse a drink was a grave insult, and led to a reputation as a mean-spirited milksop. When the temperance movement first reached Much Wenlock, it was greeted with disbelief. Dr. William Pennybrooks, the man responsible for reviving the Olympics, was on a one-man mission to improve the moral, intellectual, and physical well-being of the people of Wenlock, and was a supporter of the temperance movement. When Dr. Brooks was elected a hereditary burgess at the dinner in the Raven Hotel, he was expected to toast prosperation to the cooperation and down the contents of the mace. When Dr. Brooks refused to empty the silver cup, an incredulous mutter went about the table. One of the leading officials rose to his feet, warning, Doctor, don't disgrace yourself. In the early days of the movement, a temperance preacher came to give a sermon in Much Wenlock. He preached the evils of the devil's brew, of drunkenness leading to quarrels between brothers, emptying the pockets of the hard-working man. As the sermon continued, a large proportion of the congregation began to feel rather aggravated and aggrieved at the slur they felt the minister was laying on their characters. All God-fearing church-attending men who saw nothing wrong with slaking their thirst after a hard day's work. The resentment and the muttering grew, until one man called out, Get down and make room for a better man. The clerk, sexton, and churchwarden were sent to eject the heckler. As they surrounded him, the man stood up, dwarfing 3 churchmen as he towered over them. He was nearly as broad as he was tall, and strong as an ox from working in the quarries. The churchmen found themselves flying through the air and out the door, rather than the other way round. After that, the meeting dissolved into a free-for-all. Some took the side of the quarryman, others took the side of the preacher. Fists and feet flailed out from all sides, and no one knew quite how they managed to get the preacher home safely. The mob rioted through the town, no doubt fueled with some of the devil's brew. Windows were broken through the town, and then the mob took the town stocks, hurled them inside a lime kiln, and burnt them with much cheering and singing. The burning of stocks did not mean that the rioting offenders went unpunished. A new set of stocks was commissioned specifically to punish the miscreants, and the new design was made with wheels this time. Different. The constables thought the new stocks were marvellous, as they could wheel the stocks around town to take the miscreant wherever, when the largest audience would accumulate to bring the greatest humiliation. And the best thing about it is they delighted in seeing these people be ashamed. Mobs, for example, would gather together just to get a quick look at the humiliation, and they would enjoy it. So everyone was delighted in the wheels, just as much as the constables. The people of the town generally sided with the rioters and brought them ale from the nearest alehouse, turning the punishment into somewhat merriment, something that you would probably call today a pub crawl. The last to be punished was a man from Broseley, known as Snaily. When Snaily was released, he said he had been treated like a real lord, and he felt as if he was going straight to heaven. It was commonly agreed that he was more drunk after the day in the stocks than on the night of the riot. Such was the atmosphere when the new temperance minister and his family came to Wenlock. The minister had been warned about the attitude of the town. He was resigned to a slow and quiet start, confident that his message was strong enough to be heard eventually. He knew his congregation would be small, but there was an unexpected worshipper to swell his numbers. There at the back, face shiny and scrubbed, clothes tidy and clean, was Bill. As far as anyone knew, Bill had never been to a church service before, unless it was a wedding, funeral, or baptism, and only a handful of those. On the other hand, much Wenlock was a town of inns and alehouses. Plough, Raven, Royal Oak, George Talbot, Swan and the Falcon, Stoke, Fox, Railway Tavern, White Hart and Horse, and Jockey. And Bill was a devout follower of them all. The next week, Bill still went out drinking every night until it came to Saturday, when he stayed sober and was back at the service on Sunday. At the end of the service, the reason for Bill's sudden change of heart became clear. Shuffling from foot to foot, red-faced Bill nervously made his way over to Esther, the minister's daughter. "May I walk you home, Miss Esther, please?" Esther was tall and slender with glossy dark hair. She was 18-19, a decade younger than Bill, and a world apart in their daily lives. Her mouth dropped open in surprise, giving her father a moment to step over by her side. Esther was just forming her refusal when her father said, "Of course you may, William, and thank you for your kind offer." Esther's mouth closed and opened again and closed like a fish out of water, looking at her father in bemusement. But she preferred her arm, and Bill walked a short distance to her home, her parents following a little way behind. Bill took his leave of Esther at the gate, with a promise to see her next Sunday. The minister took his daughter inside and sat her down. "Esther, you've been given a chance to do a great thing. You've inspired that man to try a new way of life. And if you can convert Bill, a confirmed drunkard, to our cause, then who knows what we can achieve. All I'm asking is for a little kindness and charity. Let him walk you home and tell him about church." Well, there were certain young men in the town that Esther would have much preferred to walk her home, but she agreed and did what her father asked. The following Sunday, Bill was sat in service again, and at the end he made his way over to Esther with a shy smile. Esther forced a smile in return, and her father nodded in approval. Over the following weeks and months, the Sunday routine became established. Bill would scrub himself up, sit attentively through the service, and afterwards walk Esther a short way down the street to her home, always within the view of her parents, of course. Esther would talk to him of how the father had been inspired to become minister, about the temperance movement and what it had achieved. Bill was completely besotted. He was still too tongue-tied to find much to say to her, but he was content to walk beside her, drinking in her voice, her laugh, her scent, the way her hair caught the sun. Bill had almost stopped drinking altogether. He was carefully hoarding his wages, saving all the money he would usually spend on ale. He was saving for a ring. One Saturday he got his pay packet and the last few pence needed to buy the ring. The very ring he'd been saving for. He went straight into town and handed over his money, then put on his Sunday best and plucked up the courage and knocked on the minister's door. The family was surprised to see him, but he was ushered in front of Esther's parents. He took out the ring, and right then and there, he did ask her parents if they would give permission to marry her. The answer was written all too plainly across Ether's face. Instead of the affection and pleasure he had dared to imagine, shock, dismay, and disgust raced in quick succession across her face. She snatched her hand away as though she had been burnt. Colour flushed from Bill's collar up into his cheeks. His face clouded over with hurt and humiliation and anger. He turned and stumbled from the room. The minister tried to follow, calling his name, but Bill brushed the minister's hand away from his shoulder and escaped out into the street. Bill made his way to the nearest alehouse and started drinking. He shrugged off the welcoming comments and offers of conversations, and when the other customers saw the grim look on his face, they left him alone with his beer. Bill visited all his old haunts that night, drinking his way through every inn, hotel, and alehouse in the town, making no differentiation between gin and ale. The next morning, Ethel was found dead in her bed. Her face was pale as the pillow she lay on, a sheet stained crimson red, petals blooming around the knife sunk into her heart. Her family were quick to name Bill as the murderer, and the police were called. The murderer climbed to the window and prized it open. The catch was broken, and there was soil on the bedroom floor, and in the flower bed outside of the window, a perfect boot print in the soft earth. It wasn't long before the police were banging on Bill's door. He was still in a stupor, sleeping off alcohol of the night before. They dragged him from his bed and down to the cells. Bill remembered Ether's refusal and starting to drink, but with each alehouse the night grew hazier. He had no memory of getting home. An overzealous policeman took Bill's boot and hurried to the minister's house, pressed the boot into the print and declared it matched exactly. Of course, once he pressed the boot into the print, the soft earth moulded to the shape of Bill's boot, and the original print was obliterated. But everyone was sure that Bill had done it. There was no other suspect, and no one else with a motive. The case came quickly to trial, and plenty of people had seen Bill around the town that night, and testified to his grim mood he was in and the drunken state, but no one had seen Bill anywhere near the minister's house. In fact, although there was a strong motive, there was no evidence against him at all. The only thing linking him to the scene of the crime was the boot print, but now there was no proof it was Bill's boot. The judge had no choice to direct the jury to find the defendant not guilty. After the verdict was read out, Bill stood up in court, looked around at the accusing stares and said, "If I did this foul deed, may the devil take me." Bill was set free, but much Wenlock was uncomfortable, and he felt uncomfortable there too. Everyone knew the story and everyone thought he'd done it. When Bill went into any alehouse, even if he managed to get served, no one would share a table with him. The minister's wife, desperate with grief for her child, stopped going to worship with her husband, unable to pray to God who had taken her daughter. Instead, she went to Nanny Morgan up on Westwood Common. Nanny sold blessings and curses, love potions and vengeance. Nanny Morgan used the Bible in a very different way than the minister's wife ever had. She used psalms to ill-wish people. And it was indeed said that there was no other person who could read a psalm such as the curse of Nanny Morgan. There was no angel in heaven could flit by safe. More than once, Bill found himself looking into Nanny's steel grey eyes, her voice knifing into him as the curses rained down. Bill was forced to leave town. He moved away to Wolverhampton and got a job in carding mill. It was only a few months later that word filtered back to Much Wenlock that he had been killed in the industrial accident by a piece of machinery known as the Flying Devil. The end. He did say if he'd done it, let the devil take me. And I guess you could say the devil did. The Flying Devil. piece of machinery did. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this folk tale. Please hit that like, share if you can. If you've not yet subscribed, please do so because it really helps. Many blessings.